Hi, my name is Lauren Goodkind and I am a good and kind person. And yes, Goodkind is really my last name. But if you play me a game of chess, I am a mean kind of person. Today I'm going to go ahead and analyze a game. And the game was played with my friend. So my friend played against a 2366 and he asked me to go over the game and analyze it. And my friend is right. So here we go. So my friend, he lives in Texas, by the way. He moved the pawn up 2 spaces, and this is a good move because you want to get a pawn in the center. It also opens up lines for the bishop and also this queen too. So the 2366 moved the pawn to g6, and usually people move the pawn up 1 space is to get this bishop out on the long diagonal. I think most people move their pawns up 2 spaces to e5 or d5 or c5, but moving the pawn to g6, it's not that common, but it's okay. So David, he moves the pawn up 2 spaces and he's grabbing the center, and the bishop goes to g7, and this bishop is on the long diagonal, and this bishop is attacking this pawn. David decides to create a pawn chain by moving the pawn to c3, and Black moves the pawn to c5, so he's trying to attack the center. This is the d4 pawn. So White decides to move the knight to f3, and this is good. You want to move the knight toward the center, so that's good. Also notice that this knight is also attacking, no, I'm sorry, it's also protecting the d4 pawn. So the pawn takes, and White decides to take the pawn back with this c pawn. White has a really good pawn center here. Black decides to develop with knight to c6, and notice that the knight and the bishop are attacking the d4 pawn. The knight goes to c3, so David, he's doing a really good job getting the knights out. And Black decides to move the pawn to d6, and the reason why he did that is to get this bishop out. And that's important. In the opening, you want to get the knights and bishops out. So White decides to move the bishop here. So I think that's okay. I think that White can also move the bishop to b5 or c4, but bishop to e2. I think it's okay, but I think that c4 or b5, I think that's would be better, but I think a2, I think bishop to e2 is okay. Okay, Black moves this knight out and is attacking this pawn, but notice that it is not safe for this knight to take this pawn because the c3 knight is protecting the e4 pawn. White castles, and that's what you're supposed to do. The king is now safe. Black decides to castle 2, and that's a good move. And White decides to move the rook to e1. So this rook is on the e file, and Black moves the bishop to g4. Notice that the bishop is attacking the f3 knight. To see what happens. And white, or David, that's my friend, he moves the pawn to h3 to attack the bishop. And black takes the knight. And white decides to take back with this bishop. Notice that it would be a really bad idea to take the bishop with the g2 pawn, because if that happened, then this king would be opened up. And these pawns need to protect the king. So it was a good idea for David to take the bishop with the e2 bishop. Black decides to move this rook here. And notice the rook is on the c file, and there are no pawns on the c file. White's bishop goes to e3. It's important to get the knights and bishops out. And black decides to move the pawn to a6. Notice that this pawn is controlling the b5 square. And notice that now it's not safe for this knight to go to b5. Otherwise, the pawn would just take the knight. David decides to move the pawn to a3. And I think maybe he was thinking that he didn't want the knight to go to b4. Maybe that's why he played it. And black decided to move the knight to a5. And I think the idea is black wants to move the knight to c4 to attack the bishop and the pawn. That's what I think. White decides to go bishop to e2. And I'm trying to figure out why. It is controlling the c4 square, but this knight can go to c4 anyway because the rook will be protecting the knight. And that's what happens. Let's see what David does. And David moves this queen out. So why did David move this queen here? Just think about this. Is David threatening anything? Yes. David is threatening to capture the knight. Notice that there's two attackers on this knight, the queen and the bishop. And also notice that this queen is also attacking the b7 pawn. I actually find that taking the b7 pawn with the queen risky, because if the queen takes the pawn on b7, then the rook, well, not now. I mean, the rook can go to b8 to attack the queen, and once the queen moves the knight, can take that pawn. So I don't think that taking the b7 pawn, I don't think that's a free pawn. But white is definitely threatening to capture the knight on c4. And what happens is black decides to take the bishop with the knight. And of course, it would be a good idea for David to take the knight. And David decides to take the knight with the f2 pawn. And David still has a good pawn center. And black decides to move this pawn up. And white, or David, he moves the a rook to d1. And let's see what happens. He's just trying to get the rook into play. So let's see what black does. Okay, so black decides to move the queen to b6. You have to be a little bit careful right now because this queen is on the same diagonal as David's king. So you have to just be careful, but black is still doing okay. And David, he moves the pawn to d5, and now there's a lot of things going on. So this knight right now, it's attacking black's queen. It's also attacking the pawn on e7, and it's also attacking the knight on f6. Also notice that black's knight is attacking the knight and also David's pawn on e4. And black decides to take the knight, and David decides to take it back with the queen. And what happens now is black decides to move this rook to c2. And this is getting a little bit dangerous right now because this rook is on the second rank. So I am thinking is what happens if David took the knight with this pawn? That's something I would like to know. Because if David took the knight with the pawn, then black's rook wouldn't be able to go to the c2 square because the queen is controlling the c2 square. So I think maybe it would be better to take the knight with the e4 pawn. That's what I think. But David took the knight with the queen. Black's rook goes to c2. It's attacking the pawn and the bishop. So David decides to move the queen back to b3 and attack the rook. And black's other rook goes to the c file. Okay, so black is totally dominating the c file. And what does David do? David decides to go to d3, and I think that this is a good move because this rook is forced to go back to one of these squares. It's not safe for this rook to take this pawn. It's not safe to go here, here, or here, or here. So I would have just gone back. But what happened was black decided to move the pawn to e6. And now that's a huge mistake because black just hung this rook. So David decided to just take the c2 rook with the bishop, and then black resigned in this position. I think that this is a very interesting game. And again, black should have just moved the rook back to c7. That's what I would have done. So when you're playing chess, you have to always be aware of can my opponent safely capture a piece? That's really, really important. So I think that David's opponent moved too quickly, and that's what happens. You have to just think before you move. The other thing about this game is it was a 5-minute game. And 5 minutes means it's a blitz game, and that means that you don't have a lot of time to think. 5 minutes is really, really quick. So I thought this was a very interesting game, and I think if you're just starting out in chess, you have to just remember to ask questions. And if your opponent can safely capture a piece, you need to do something about that piece. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy watching me play games, if you like watching me analyze games, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like to if you want to play me a chess game on LeeChess.com, let me know. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.